high and the mighty will fall. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Wall of Power Radio Hour. We have a terrific returning guest tonight, Professor Margaret Daniel. We're calling this fourth episode Gilligan and the Professor because Ann is so much smarter than I am. She's a professor at the New School, University of New York City. Also, she teaches at Bard College at Annandale-on-Hudson. Her essays on music, literature, and books have appeared in the New York Times, the Hot Press, No Depression, and more. She's got more degrees than Albert Einstein. She knows quite a bit about a fellow named F. Scott Fitzgerald and another Minnesota writer, musician named Bob Dylan. And we've been taking 3 episodes, and now this will be our 4th, a deep dive into Bob Dylan's new, what I'm calling a masterpiece, Rough and Rowdy Ways. Professor, how are you today?
I'm just fine, and thank you so much for having me back. That is an introduction that I cannot even hope to live up to.
Well, you've been incredible, and I've gotten such great response on these shows. And, of course, Dylan fanatics love talking to other Dylan fanatics. So, and you bring such a deep dive into your knowledge about Bob Dylan. You're quite the scholar when it comes to Bob and other things. But we've saved the epic on Rough and Rowdy Ways, Murder Most Foul, for this episode on the Wall of Power Radio Hour. And I'm looking at the lyrics here that I printed out, Professor, and I've got 5 pages. It's a long one.
I was just going to say, you killed a lot of trees, Paul.
You know,
it is a very long song, and I mean, I would say that the bulk of the song is dedicated to the long list, or rather litany, of names of other songs, plays, artistic works that comes at the end with the directive play this, play that. But actually the bulk of the song, the weight of the song, is in the original stanzas that come before it. It may not take up as much room in what you've printed out, but my gosh, that's heavy.
Well, and it was the first song that was released from the record Rough and Rowdy Ways. And, you know, the opening lines, "'Twas a dark day in Dallas, November 63, a day that will live on in infamy. President Kennedy was a riding high. Good day to be a living and a good day to die." What a heavy way to start a song, man. Woo! What did you think when you heard it for the first time?
Well, it was funny. I couldn't sleep that night. I think like many people in our country and around the world, during these dark days, I've been plagued by insomnia, or at least I have trouble getting to sleep at night. And I've been sort of adrift and you know, trying to read, and it was kind of 11:15, 11:30 that night. I hadn't been able to concentrate, and I clicked over to look at Bob Links. I clicked over to look at a set list from a Dylan concert that I actually went to some decades ago. And in my search, I noticed that there was a link that said his own official website was down, or BobDylan.com was not responding, or, you know, it was blank at this time. And I thought, I wonder what's up. And I stayed awake. And I clicked over, and then, bang, at 12:02, there was Murder Most Foul. And simultaneously, it was posted at Bob Dylan Vivo, the video-audio recording. And I listened to the audio all the way through while looking at the only image that accompanied the official video, which is this Bachrach, Fabian Bachrach portrait of John F. Kennedy that was taken actually when he was a senator, and that became his official White House portrait. And there it is reproduced in sepia with the words "Murder Most Foul" in Gothic script over it. and you just looked into Kennedy's eyes and listened to the words of the song. It was a pretty overwhelming experience soon after midnight, I got to tell you.
In the midnight hour. That's,
Yep.
well, in a way, though, kind of a perfect way to get into a song that has a lot of darkness in it, but yet has a lot of light in it as well.
So much darkness. And I mean, not just the beginning. It begins as a ballad, of course. I mean, all ballads begin once upon a time, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is, with that archaic twas. It's not it was, it's twas a dark day in Dallas, November 63. And that, so you know exactly what that day is. You don't have to look it up, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you're even remotely a sentient person on this planet, I think you know that in November 1963, American history was entirely changed, and the modern world became the contemporary world with the assassination of a young president. But then that second line, a day that will live on in infamy. Well, my dad was an American historian. He taught Civil War and Reconstruction at the University of Richmond down in Virginia for 40 years. And he grew up as a New Deal Democrat, so I certainly knew a lot about FDR personally.
Mm-hmm.
And again, if you're at least over a certain age, or if you've read, or if you know anything of American history, you know about the date that will live in infamy, which, of course, is the attack on Pearl Harbor
December
that finally
7th.
got America into World War II,
Mm-hmm.
and that came from Franklin Delano Roosevelt's speech that he gave announcing that we were going into the war. So you've got the murder of Kennedy twinned with FDR, another great Democratic president, and the attack on Pearl Harbor, which, that was 1941. That's the year in which Bob Dylan is born. So, there's just such an overwhelming richness and darkness and also history that's packed into not just every single line of this song, but every single word of this song, Well,
and then, the other mind-blowing thing about this record, he was born in 1941, which means he's the hardest rockin' 79-year-old ever. Every time
I have to tell you, Paul, I'm very much missing, as we all are, I'm very much missing live music these days.
Oh.
And of course it absolutely makes sense not to be at concerts. I am basically still sheltering at home, except when essential and necessary. I wear a mask every time I go out. I wash my hands compulsively. I'm trying to keep others safe as well as myself, of course. But I was so looking forward to the Dylan tour this summer. I had tickets to a number of the events, including one at a fantastic outdoor venue up in Vermont. And I was so looking forward to the premiere of songs like Goodbye, Jimmy Reed, and I Crossed the Rubicon and Key West. I don't know. I mean, who knows what Dylan will do or won't do. But I don't think this would have been a song he would have premiered in concert this summer. But you never know.
You never know. Well, Keith, I just read a great interview with Keith Richards in Rolling Stone. He said, you take the damn out of pandemic and all you have left is panic.
Oh.
God
bless Keith.
Leave it to
That's a good one.
Oh, he's one of the smartest men in rock and roll. We are going to play parts of Murder Most Foul throughout the next three segments, and have some more great insight from my guest, Professor Margaret Daniel. We're going to jump right into Bob Dylan and his song Murder Most Foul.
'Twas a dark day in Dallas, November 63, a day that will live on in infamy. President Kennedy was a riding high Good day to be living and a good day to die. Being led to the slaughter like a sacrificial lamb. You say, wait a minute, boys, you know who I am? Of course we do, we know who you are. Then they blew off his head while he was still in the car. Shot down like a dog in broad daylight. Was a matter of timing, and the timing was right. You got unpaid debts, we've come to collect. We're gonna kill you with hatred without any respect. We'll mock you and shock you, and we'll grin in your face. We've already got someone here to take your place. The day they blew out the brains of the king, thousands were watching, no one saw a thing. It happened so quickly, so quick by surprise, right there in front of everyone's eyes. Greatest magic trick ever under the sun, perfectly executed, skillfully done. Wolfman, oh wolfman, oh wolfman, howl. Rub-a-dub-dub, it's a murder most foul.
Welcome back to the Wall of Power Radio Hour. This is your host, Paul Metsa. My guest, Professor Ann Margaret Daniel. And this, we're entered the first set on the Wall of Power Radio Hour talking about seeing Dylan live. And you and I have mentioned this in our previous 3 episodes about how these songs, the new songs that Bob Dylan plays, how they just evolve when he starts playing them live. And that's why not only do we miss seeing him play, but we're missing some of to see these great new songs evolve like that. What are some of your, I know you probably got dozens of great Dylan performances you've witnessed, but what comes to you when I ask, Professor, what is one of the greatest moments when you've seen Bob Dylan in concert?
Oh, golly. Well, I have to limit that because there are so many, but I'll limit it to what you're talking about, which is the concept of the evolving song and how he does make changes. I absolutely gloried in a performance he did of Tangled Up in Blue. I want to say it was either at the Borgata or at Asbury Park in New Jersey. And he changed the lines. He always messes with Tangled Up in Blue, famously so. Mm-hmm. And the lyric was it's the she was working in a topless place and I stopped in for a beer lyric. And he changed it so that she was working at the Tropicana. And she said she's going down to Atlanta, and I said I'm going to stay right here. And I purely loved that. I couldn't believe it when I heard it, but it was a beautiful kind of, in the moment change, and at least to me. And another moment that was like that for me was when he sang "Simple Twist of Fate" in his last stand of shows that he has had to date up at the Beacon Theater on Broadway in New York, which was back in December of 2019. And he did just some of the most beautiful patterns of rhyme in that song. And the whole idea that, she should have met me back in 58, blame it on a simple twist of fate. He made several changes in that lyric that made the song seem like it was happening in New York City, not in the early 1960s, and not all about Susan Rodolo and her relationship with Dylan, which is how the song is usually pegged.
Mm-hmm.
But it made it seem like it was happening right here in the here and now. And I can't explain it. You kind of had to be there, but it made that song so different for me.
I remember, I think it was 1990. Bob Dylan was playing the Minnesota State Fair, and of course, we love seeing Dylan when he returns to his home state. But
Sure.
And it was one of those shows where his voice was really raspy, and there's sometimes it takes a minute or 2 or 3 minutes into a song before you realize what song he's actually singing. In fact, I remember a great review on Bob Links where somebody took his wife to their first Dylan show, and as they were walking out, the guy next to him overheard them chatting, and the wife says to the husband, "Was he singing in German?"
I remember a time in kind of the middle 90s or the late 90s where a group of unnamed Dylan fans, some serious Dylanologists among them, would play what they called Dylan bingo at concerts. And it was just sort of, the first one to guess the song got a free beer from the others.
Oh, that's fun.
That's something that he's kind of been, chastised for or mocked for by some critics all his career.
Right.
The fact that he quote unquote can't sing. Honestly, I've never had any trouble making out the lyrics, even when he's dropping in new lyrics, and you have to kind of rub your ear and go, "Wait a minute, did I actually hear that?"
Well, I remember at that state fair show, and it was still, I'll take Dylan however he wants to appear, whatever he wants to do. I'm down with it. Totally uncritical. I'm just happy to be in the same place with him. But he came out with Song to Woody that I'd never heard him do live, and it was so
how wonderful!
transcendent at the Minnesota State Fair. And then at the end of the show, you had the fireworks, and you're at the original grandstand where they had, that was built in 1905, and they used to have car races there. But it was just such a beautiful moment. But that whole, no Woody, no Bob, right? No Woody Guthrie, no Bob. And it was just, one of 25 moments I can grab in the deep recesses of my memory in terms of Bob Dylan. So we've got Professor and Margaret Daniel on for the whole show tonight. We're going to take another dip into Murder Most Foul and be back with the professor in just a bit.
Riding in the back seat next to my wife, heading straight on into the afterlife. I'm leaning to the left and I got my head in her lap. Oh Lord, I've been led into some kind of a trap. Well, we ask no quarter do we give. We're right down the street from the street where you live. They mutilated his body and they took out his brain. What more could they do? They piled on the pain. But his soul was not there where it was supposed to be at. For the last 50 years, they've been searching for that. Freedom, oh freedom, freedom over me. I hate to tell you, mister, but only dead men are free. Send me some loving, tell me no lie. Throw the gun in the gutter and walk on by. Wake up, little Susie, let's go for a drive. Cross the Trinity River, let's keep hope alive. Turn the radio on, don't touch the dials. Parkland Hospital, only 6 more miles. You got me dizzy, Miss Lizzie. You fill me with lead. That magic. Wolfman Jack, he's speaking in tongues. He's going on and on at the top of his lungs. Play me a song, Mr. Wolfman Jack. Play it for me in my long Cadillac. Play me that only the good die young. Take me to the place Tom Dooley was hung. They say James Infirmary in the court of King James. If you want to remember, you better write down the names. Play it at James 2. Play it Rather Go Blind. Play it for the man with a telepathic mind. Play John Lee Hooker. Play Scratch My Back. Play it for that strip club owner named Jack. Guitar Slim going down slow. Play it for me and for Marilyn Monroe. Play Please Don't Let Me Be Misunderstood. Play it for the first lady, she ain't feeling too good. Play Don Henley, play Glenn Fry. Take it to the limit and let it go by. Play it for Kyle Wilson too. Looking far, far way down Gower Avenue. Play Tragedy, play Twilight Time. Take me back to Tulsa to the scene of the crime. Play another one and another one bites the dust. Play the old rugged cross and in God we trust. Ride the pink horse down that long lonesome road. Stand there and wait for his head to explode. Play Mystery Train for Mystery.
Welcome back to the third set of the Wall of Power Radio Hour. This is your host, Paul Metsa. And my guest on 4 shows now, this is the 4th, Professor Anne Margaret Daniel. We just heard a nice little collection of musicians that Dylan name-checked in Murder Most Foul. We started off the line, Wolfman Jack, he's speaking in tongues. He's going on and on at the top of his lungs. Tell us about this part of the song and what you really love about it, Professor.
Well, I love any shout out to Wolfman Jack, classic American radio hero. Well, I should say international radio hero. And there are a lot of references to good old radio stations and DJs and the importance that radio had in American culture, particularly during the 20th century. From, something like FDR's Fireside Chats, where an entire family would gather around that radio to listen to, someone like Wolfman Jack, and the importance that he certainly had to young people, young musicians who wanted to know what was cool, what was hip, what was with it, what was popular during the whole course of his career. And then, of course, Dylan's own Theme Time Radio Hour is embedded in the beginning of this stanza, because Dylan, in his DJ role for Theme Time Radio Hour, which I purely love and listen to all the time on road trips in the car, he assumes a kind of a Wolfman Jack persona, this sort of kind of cranky sometimes, very wry, very sly, didactic DJ who's teaching you about all this old music and great things and great songs that you may not have heard before. And then that's exactly what Dylan goes into in the lyrics, in the remaining lyrics of Murder Most Foul, where he says, play me a song, Mr. Wolfman Jack, Play it for me in my long Cadillac. Play me that Only the Good Die Young. Take me to the place Tom Dooley was hung. St. James Infirmary. I'd rather go blind. John Lee Hooker, Scratch My Back. Guitar Slim, Going Down Slow. Boom, boom, boom. He just starts hitting you with all these artists and all these songs that he clearly wants you to listen to, that he wants you to understand, and that he wants you to hear. When he says, play St. James Infirmary, he wants you to know the words to that song, and he wants you to listen to it and pay attention to it, or else why would he have included it, you know?
Mm-hmm. I loved...
It's much more of a litany than it is a checklist.
And that you referenced I'd Rather Go Blind. Play Etta James, too. Play I'd Rather Go Blind. Play it for the man with a telepathic mind. Just, you just got to love it.
Well, you got to love the rhyme, but then you dig a little deeper, and you know that there was a guy called the man with the telepathic mind.
Okay,
right?
Tell us about that. That's why we have you on the show, because you know stuff nobody else knows. So, what's the deep dive there?
I think it got figured out pretty quickly once people started diving in. There was a guy named William H. McCaffrey, and he was a card sharp. He was a magician from Pittsburgh, and he traveled around. He was a student of hypnotism and this, that, and the other, and he traveled around doing kind of a sideshow. It was sort of a semi-pro act that he called Psychic Possibilities, and he did this act on into the 20th century. He lived until I think 1988 or 89. He lived to be quite an old guy, and he spent most of the rest of his career in L.A. And he was always billed as the man with the telepathic mind. Like, he could tell you which card you were going to pick before you picked it, that kind of thing. So even what seems to be just kind of a cool, strange rhyme has a basis in fact. And Dylan is the master of taking fact and fiction and fragments and splinters, and it's what he does with all that. He takes quotations, he takes paraphrases, he takes, in this song, he takes colloquial phrases like, shot down like a dog or blew his head off. He takes those phrases and he mixes them and makes something entirely new out of them, and he redeploys them in such an original way.
Thank you for that story. That stuff you're only going to get to hear if you listen to the Wall of Power Radio with my great guests like Professor and Margaret Daniel. I just love that. The one thing that that I've always appreciated about Dylan is his sense of American history. Not just music, history, period.
He absolutely is a historian. And it's I'd like to claim him just for America, but I think he probably knows more about classical history and classical mythology. He certainly seems to know more about certain aspects of European history, than a lot of professors do.
But, later on, or part of the song, the Birdman Alcatraz, play Buster Keaton, play Harold Lloyd, play Bugsy Siegel, play Pretty Boy Floyd. I mean, these are just such icons in American history, and God bless Mr. Dylan for putting them all together in one 17-minute song.
They really are, and they flood your mind with memories and reminders, as you must think they do his. The Birdman of Alcatraz was yes, he was a criminal, but he was also a really cool guy and a serious ornithologist. And then, of course, the layer on top of that is the film that was made with Burt Lancaster. Mm-hmm. That, and Dylan has a lot of movie references. I mean, this is a little boy who in the 1940s spent a lot of time in his local family theater there.
The Lima Theater. In fact, that theater is still there. It's a bakery now. But the actual, really? You could still go. It's right at the end of, on the west end of Howard Street. There was a bad fire, though. I don't know exactly. I was just up north last week, and the the Moose Club. I don't know if it burnt to the ground, but there was a bad fire there, and that's, of course, where
that's terrible.
Bob used to sneak in and serenade Echo Hellstrom on the rickety piano up there. Yeah, right in downtown Hibbing. So I just saw there was, I don't know, I hope to God they saved the building, but who knows? And Margaret Daniel.
Yeah, well, it's good to know. It's good to know the movie theater is still standing.
Yeah, and there's still the actually little theater, which I believe was his grandmother's nickname, or there was some connection with her name. That's why they called it the Libba. But there's actually
the Libba. Yeah, the Libba.
That's actually those. The actual letters for those are in a warehouse somewhere in Hibbing. Somebody's got them. So if they ever recreate
well,
it,
you have
it's
to
there.
you have to wonder. You know, did that little kid, did Bobby back in the late 1940s, did he see a Buster Keaton double feature on the screen there? Is that where he first saw Harold Lloyd? Certainly, is that where he first saw Terry Malloy?
Right.
Or It Happened One Night, and Merchant of Death. There are all these movies that make their way among the songs into the end of Murder Most Foul.
How did you feel when you started listening at 12:02 on a dark night when you couldn't sleep? How did you feel by the end of the song, Anne? 17 minutes later, how did Professor Daniel feel?
Well, I did the old da capo al fine. I went back to the beginning and listened to it all over again. So I was pretty much down for more than half an hour. And then I was impelled to write something about it. And then I curled up and I went to sleep very soundly, actually, with this kind of rich stew in my head. And the next day, I actually went to see what other people's reactions to the song were, because I knew that there would be a lot of company. I knew that this song would have a lot of people listening to it, and that as a result, it would draw a lot of people together. And that's something Dylan does so well. I was grateful the next day. I was really happy to have friends who were talking about this and thinking about this and listening to it. And it was something nice that we could have in common, even though, as you pointed out, it certainly is a dark song in a lot of ways, in primary ways. But it's also something that gave a whole lot of people something new to listen to, something interesting and moving to think about, and, some positive other songs to listen to. Maybe somebody had never heard that Old Devil Moon or Memphis in June before, and they went and listened to them. Maybe somebody never heard the Moonlight Sonata played, and they took some comfort from that after listening to this song of Dylan's. And so I guess I kind of woke up the next day more in a grateful vein, which is saying something in these days.
Well, and I think kind of the whole gift of Rough and Rowdy Ways was, number one, who really saw it coming, and then all of a sudden he releases 3 tracks, and then the record comes out. During these times, what a balm for anybody that digs Dylan, or like you and I loves Dylan. Just what a wonderful way to help us get through this time.
Honestly, Paul, I think it's a balm for anyone who thinks and feels.
There you go. Yeah, absolutely. We've got Professor Anne Margaret Daniel on. We're going to chat with her a little bit more after these messages. We'll be right back.
Wall of Power Radio Hour.
Welcome back to the last set of the Wall of Power Radio Hour. This is your host, Paul Metsa. I would like to thank my guest, Professor Anne Margaret Daniel. We've had 4 great episodes doing the deep dive into Bob Dylan's new record, and I call it a masterpiece called Rough and Rowdy Ways. And so when you think about Bob Dylan, where do you place him just in terms of American history? Greatest songwriter, one of the great poets, great American. How would you describe him?
Carry on, you're getting there.
Well, he's just
all of the above, and he's don't set him in stone yet. He's still rolling.
Mm-hmm. Well, Bob Dylan is a work in progress. You know, when you think about it, I keep going back to this releasing this record at the age of 79. When most guys his age are retired, they're playing shuffleboard, they're going to the casino, and Bob is out there working. And when he's not writing, and he would be on the road if we weren't going through these pandemic times. But I look at him as an Iron Ranger who became a musician and folk musician due to a large part of Bob's influence on me, and then, of course, all my other influences. But at the end of the day, I look at Bob Dylan, and I tell people, and I truly believe this, that you can go to a bar on the Iron Range on a Friday or Saturday night and find the 5 character traits that I think, to me, define Dylan. The loner, the greaser, the asshole, the guy that just got off the second shift, maybe worked a double that day, having a drink before he goes home to feed his family, and then the weirdo at the back of the bar drinking cheap brandy, reading James Joyce.
And then look further, and you find an explorer getting on a really teeny tiny boat to head out into a big, empty, unknown ocean, and not thinking about it twice. You have someone who is sitting around in a toga with only the most primitive kinds of writing implements, those pens that you find in Roman graves and still sometimes in the streets of Rome when they're dug up for construction, writing on what they had for paper, whether it was processed like papyrus or whether it was an animal skin vellum. You find someone writing poems. Throw those in there too.
And then you have to think back, as a 19-year-old, he hitchhikes to New York City in January. Nobody hitchhikes cross country in the middle of the winter, unless you're from the Iron Range. And now he's welding, and there's nothing more Iron Range than Bob Dylan with it.
I really like the point about the welding. Yeah, he seems to be very much enjoying 2 of his newer professions, which are number one, the sculpting that he's doing. Incredible sculptures, really beautiful sculptures, many of which are made out of basically car parts, industrial parts, and that harken back to just what you're talking about, laborers in factories and guys who've just gotten off a shift. And he's making art out of these machine things in a way that kind of harkens back to Chaplin's Modern Times. And he also really seems to be enjoying his new ventures like this Heaven's Door,
right?
The whiskey making, and who knows what he's going to do next. I would not have called the distillery brand, but
that would have been on your Dylan bingo card, beer bingo.
It was not on my Dylan bingo card, strangely. I mean, the Victoria's Secret. Remember the Victoria's Secret?
Oh my God, that came out of left field
with Adriana Lima in a palazzo somewhere in Venice. That was on my card because he did mention ladies' undergarments as a possible career or focus back in some interview in 1965 or 66.
Well, that's the other the thing about Bob Dylan that I've always admired. He's got such an incredible sense of humor.
Yes, he does, and he's not given nearly enough credit for that.
And Margaret Daniel, this has been such an incredible series of shows. Well, can I have, anytime you have a new project on or you just want to talk, get in touch with me. I'd have you on anytime to talk about anything you want. How can people track down your work? What's your website?
Oh, That's very kind of you to ask. It's just my name. It's Ann with an E, MargaretDaniel.com.
And that's Daniel, Daniel.
Yes, thank you so much for asking.
Well, Ann, thank you so much. I look forward to meeting you in person. I look forward to giving you a personally guided tour of Dinkytown. Then we're going to Duluth, and then we're going to Hibbing, and then we're going to go to a bar on Howard Street and have a couple of cocktails.
Excellent. I cannot wait. I really can't wait. And some sunny day, this will come to pass, Paul. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and have a wonderful day, and go take those dogs of yours for a beautiful long walk.
I will do just that. Bye, Paul.
Thanks, Ed. Bye-bye. Not all poor men are honest. Not all rich men are thieves. But the rich man owns the orchard. You know, the poor man rakes the leaves. And as the world goes around, all I want to ask is, if the rich man owns the land, why must the poor man pay the taxes?
Why does justice go so slow? Slow justice slowly goes.
Poor means stop, only rich means go.
Slow justice slowly goes. They say a woman's work is never done. Do you wonder why? They could make half as much for double time on the by and by. Well, I ain't no country doctor, ain't no country doctor's kid, but I can tell you that my mother never lived in has read. Why does justice go so slow? Slow justice slowly goes. Little girl means stop, little boy means go. Slow justice slowly goes.
They kill a black minister in Memphis town. Black prince at Audubon Hall. They used different guns in Cape Town, but the same bullet shot them all.
South Africa was a ghetto, now it lays like broken glass. One world with different colors, you know there ain't no second class.
Why does justice go so slow? Slow justice slowly goes. Any color means stop, only white means go. Slow justice slowly goes.
The People's House in D.C. is wetter than before. There's a bunker in the basement and gold locks on the door. The ghosts of slaves are marching, bleeding red and white and blue, from the streets of Minneapolis to Pennsylvania Avenue. Thanks for listening to the Wall of Power Radio Hour. The show was produced by Paul Metsa, engineered by Patrick Lilia. We'd like to thank our great guest, Professor Ann Margaret Daniel. The song you heard, Slow Justice 2.0, is going to be coming up on the re-release of my record I did in 92 called Whistling Past the Graveyard. Stay in tune with paulmetsa.com to find out more info on that. And like my dad used to tell me, remember to be kind and make someone happy.